The story of New France is very different from the stories of New Spain and the English colonies in North America. Uh, the Spanish were very concerned about exploiting native people's labor and therefore had terrible relations with Native Americans. The English were also likely to force labor from the Native Americans, and they were especially interested in taking away their land for cash crops, such as tobacco and rice. But New France was not really so interested in either one of those things, and that created some important differences. Now, when the French first came, uh, they had some goals. They were interested in a Northwest Passage, a route through North America to the Pacific so that they could find that all-water route to East Asia, except to go north rather than to go down around the either Africa or the southern tip of South America. Um, the Northwest Passage did not exist, though, so that goal was absolutely unsuccessful. And like the Spanish, they wanted precious metals, but there are no precious metals to be found in Quebec or in most parts that the of North America that the French settled. So that was an utter failure also. And then they found an activity that succeeded, and that was the fur trade, and that was the um, economic activity that made New France make sense and that made it successful for quite some time. They also were interested in religious conversions, and that was partially successful as well. And here, the Jesuits played a very important role, and they were much more successful in dealing with Native Americans than the Franciscan missionaries were in working in New Spain. The Franciscans, as you may remember, uh, provoked a major revolt, the Pueblo Revolt, in the late 17th century. The Jesuits were much more willing to allow native peoples to keep many of their own customs, and they blended those with Christianity. Uh, there was some interest in farming, but the success was only limited. The growing season in Canada is much more limited for agriculture, and they never really found a hugely successful cash crop to parallel tobacco or rice that the English were profiting from. Uh, there were a good number of explorations that took place over time over a very vast area. I'll just run through them quickly. Cartier, in the first half of the 16th century, explored the St. Lawrence River, again hoping to find a Northwest Passage, which he never did. Um, Champlain was an explorer, but also a founder of Quebec. In 1608, he founded the French city of Quebec, and he explored the areas that you see in red here on the map. Um, Nicollet uh, progressed through the Great Lakes and sought the Mississippi River, but it was left to La Salle to actually explore the length of the Mississippi. And after doing this, he claimed a French control over the entire Mississippi Valley and this massive area of North America. Um, you can see in blue here the extent of New France in 1750. That was the height of the colony's strength. Um, yeah, on a map, it looks like it would be much more powerful than the much smaller British colonies. That, however, was not the case because the population was so low. A debate that was carried on in Paris over the nature of this colony was between farming as the main activity and fur trading as the main activity. The first vision uh, argued that they should promote commercial farming, farming for a market, in other words, and that they should limit exploration, not try to control such a large area, not expand so much, uh, and put a limit on fur trading so that the price of furs would remain high. The second vision was that they should limit the farming, farm only for subsistence, in other words, for what they needed to feed their own people and for the local market, but not try to develop large cash crops to send in quantity back across the ocean. And this vision said they should expand to a large area and put a great emphasis on fur trading. And it was the second vision that won out. That became the model for the development of New France. Um, Now, when you look at the population of the French and British colonies in North America, there's really no comparison. You look, especially as we get into the 18th century, even by the height of its power, New France only had a population of 76,000 French settlers, as opposed to over 1 million for the English colonies. And when it came to war between the two countries, this was a significant disadvantage for New France. Now, um, why the difference in the way the French and the British settled colonies in North America? Well, one reason was that France was underpopulated. Even though they had a larger population than Britain, they had a vastly larger land area. Uh, and Britain had to deal with the problem of overpopulation, of overcrowding in cities like London. And they were much more interested in sending some of their extra population, some of their unemployed young men especially, who could create all sorts of problems, over across the ocean where they wouldn't be a problem in the home country. France didn't share that problem. Um, France also refused to allow non-Catholics in New France. There was a large minority of French people who were called Huguenots, who were French Calvinists, Protestants, but they were not allowed to migrate to New France, and they might otherwise have done that because their treatment in France was not very good. France, of course, was an overwhelmingly Catholic country. Um, so, uh, and they were also concerned that a large population would work against the interests of the fur trade because they needed good relations with Native Americans. And if there were a lot of people competing for land, that would sour their relatively good relations they had with the Indians. Um, Farming also was not so likely to be successful in New France because there were not only fewer settlers for the reasons we've discussed, but the growing season was shorter, and up in the north, where New France was centered, there was no obvious uh, cash crop that could bring in large profits in the way that tobacco and rice did in the English colonies. Now, although the French had better relations with Indians, they still had an extremely negative effect on the Native American population for a combination of reasons. One, they brought diseases such as smallpox, whooping cough, measles, flu, and the death rate was as high as 60 to 70% over several decades. So in this, they had a lot in common with the English and the Spanish colonies. Christianity was also divisive. They converted a good number of Native Americans to Christianity, uh, but this created warfare sometimes between Christian and pagan Indians. And the French, favoring the Christians, for example, gave firearms to the Christian Hurons to fight the pagan Hurons. So this created all sorts of uh, divisions within the native community. And that weakened the Hurons in turn when they had to oppose the Iroquois, who were allies of the Dutch. So in ways that the French had not predicted or intended, their missionary activities caused problems. Um, they also uh, encouraged, without really intending to all the time, they encouraged warfare. There were rivalries over trade, for example, among Native American groups, and they naturally allied with Europeans, and that pulled them into the conflicts that one European nation had with another. For example, the Dutch and the English versus the French. Um, if you're trading for your own needs, that's called subsistence, then you're not going to overhunt, for example. You're not going to trap too many furs.